Human helped an alien girl escape a cracked ridge. Her soft gratitude held a deeper story. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The ridge had been quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that made Ethan Cole slow his steps without realizing it. Dust drifted in the sunlight like floating embers, catching in the warm breeze that rolled off the cracked stone walls. He had walked this stretch of the canyon 100 times for survey work, boots scraping over dry gravel, backpack heavy with tools. But today something felt off, like the air was holding its breath. Then he heard it, a faint sound, thinner than a whisper, almost swallowed by the wind. Not quite human, not quite anything he knew. Ethan stood still, listening, brow furrowed beneath his sun-bleached hair. Another sound followed, strained and trembling, like someone trying not to cry. He moved toward it without thinking, each step careful along the unstable edge. When he reached the fractured ridge, a soft glimmer caught his eye, blue, like moonlight on water. He leaned closer. That was when he saw her. A girl, or something close to one, wedged between two slabs of rock where the ground had split. Her skin carried a gentle blue-green glow beneath a layer of dust, and her eyes, wide, bright, golden, lifted toward him with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. She didn't speak. She only breathed sharply when the ridge shifted again with a low groan. Ethan's pulse kicked up, but his voice stayed calm. Hey, it's okay. I'm here. She blinked at him, uncertain, as if the words were unfamiliar. The canyon wind tugged at her hair, long and silver-soft, tangled from the fall. She tried to move, but pain tightened her expression and she froze. Ethan knelt, testing the rock with his hands. Warm from the morning sun. Too warm. Heat meant expansion, and expansion meant shifting. She didn't have long. I'm going to get you out, he said softly. He didn't know if she understood English, but she watched his hands, studied his face, as if searching for danger. Instead, she found something else, steadiness, maybe, or the quiet sincerity he never knew he carried until moments like this. He wedged his shoulder under the looser slab, bracing his boots against the ridge. The stone resisted, groaning, sending a small rain of dust across her cheek. She flinched, breath hitching, but Ethan kept his voice low. It's okay. I've got you. Inch by inch, the pressure eased. She shifted one leg free, then hesitated, looking at him again as if seeking permission. Ethan nodded once. She slid out slowly, trembling from effort. When she finally stood beside him on the flat rock, unsteady but free, she pressed a hand lightly to her chest, then touched her fingers to her forehead. Some kind of gesture, small and soft, carrying a weight he couldn't yet read. Gratitude. And something deeper he didn't understand. The wind rose again, warm and quiet, like the ridge exhaling at last. Ethan watched her golden eyes, wondering who she was, and what story she carried into his world. The canyon felt different once she stood beside him, as if the silence shifted to make space for two instead of one. Ethan watched the girl steady herself, her hand lightly touching the rough stone as though learning its texture. Her breathing had evened out, but a faint tremor still moved through her shoulders. She gazed toward the open stretch of the ridge, unsure of which direction was safe. The sunlight reflected softly on her blue-green skin, turning the dust into a silver shimmer across her arms. Ethan adjusted the strap on his backpack, trying not to move too quickly. She seemed alert to every small sound. We should get off the ridge, he said, keeping his voice gentle. The rock here shifts when it gets warm. She looked at him, golden eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion now, but in concentration, like she was translating each word inside her mind. Then she nodded. When she took her first step, her knee wobbled. Ethan instinctively reached out, then paused, giving her a moment to decide if she wanted help. She hesitated only a breath before placing her hand lightly against his arm. The contact was barely there, warm and soft, like a feather resting on skin. Together, they moved toward the safer path that wound along the canyon wall. Loose pebbles crunched under their boots and her lighter steps. The wind carried the dry scent of sandstone and heat. After a while, Ethan spoke. "Do you have a name?" She looked up, surprised, as if the question was rare. "Leary," she said slowly, her accent gentle and melodic, shaped by a language that was not built for harsh consonants. She placed her palm against her chest. "Leary." Ethan smiled. "I am Ethan." She repeated it softly, trying the shape of it. "Ethan." There was something tender in the way she spoke it, like she acknowledged him not just as a person, but as someone she had chosen to trust, at least for now. As they walked, she kept glancing behind them, her brows tightening. Ethan noticed, but did not press. Instead, he kept his pace slow and his footsteps easy to read. The canyon narrowed ahead, creating a pocket of shade where the air felt cooler. Leary paused there, letting her fingers trail along the wall. She looked up at him, a subtle tilt of her head signaling curiosity. "Why did you pull the stone?" she asked. Her voice held no accusation, only genuine confusion. "People do not help without reason." Ethan shook his head lightly. "I could not leave you there. You were hurt." She studied him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the shaded rock. Then she nodded once, absorbing the idea as though it was something new to her world. They continued deeper into the shade, the sound of wind growing softer behind them. Leary walked closer now, not touching him, but close enough that he could hear her steady breaths. Something unspoken hung between them, not heavy, just present, like a beginning that had not yet revealed its shape. When the path widened and the sunlight returned, she looked at him again, gentle gratitude in her gaze. But beneath that gratitude, Ethan sensed something else, something quiet and hidden, a story she was not ready to tell. Not yet. The sun had shifted by the time they reached the lower bend of the canyon, turning the light softer, warmer, as if the world itself was trying not to disturb the fragile calm that had settled between them. Leary walked slowly, her steps more sure now, though every so often she paused to listen, her ears reacting to sounds Ethan could not hear. He noticed the way she tilted her head, the subtle way her shoulders tightened, like she was tracking something far behind them. She did not speak of it, and he did not push. The path curved into a narrow hollow carved by years of wind. Ethan stopped there and touched the rock wall, checking the temperature. "We can rest here for a moment," he said. Leary watched his hand, then the wall, mimicking him with gentle curiosity. She placed her palm on the stone and seemed surprised by its warmth. "It feels alive," she murmured. Ethan smiled a little. "The canyon changes with the heat. Rocks expand during the day and contract when it cools. It is like its own breathing." She considered that, her golden eyes reflecting the dim shade. "In my world, stone does not move. It does not breathe." Her voice softened. "It is only silent." Ethan lowered his backpack onto a flat patch of ground. He pulled out a small water bottle and held it toward her. Leary hesitated, studying it as if unsure how it worked. He unscrewed the cap and offered it again. This time she accepted it carefully, lifting it with both hands. She watched the water swirl before taking a slow sip. Her eyes widened at the coolness. "It tastes like sky," she whispered. The simplicity of the statement made Ethan's chest warm in a quiet, unexpected way. She handed the bottle back with careful precision, as if it was something valuable. When she settled onto a smooth rock, she kept her posture straight, hands folded loosely in her lap. A faint shimmer still clung to her skin where the dust had not completely settled. Ethan sat a short distance away, giving her room. The canyon wind shifted, carrying the dry smell of sun-baked earth. After a long moment she spoke again, voice quieter this time. "Ethan, you asked why I kept looking behind us." He nodded, waiting. Leary took a breath, steady and slow. "There are people searching. Not for the canyon." Her gaze drifted to the ground, then lifted to meet his. "For me." She did not tremble, but something in her expression softened, like a truth she had carried too long. Ethan leaned slightly forward, not intruding, just listening. Leary continued, choosing each word with care. "I did not fall into the ridge by accident. I ran. I kept running until the ground opened." Her fingers brushed the dust on her knee, tracing shapes that disappeared with the wind. "I did not know the earth shifted beneath its own heat. I did not know it could swallow me." She looked up at him, and for the first time since he found her, there was something vulnerable in her golden eyes. "When you pulled the stone, I thought you were another one of them." Ethan shook his head. I am not. Her shoulders eased at that, just slightly. I know, she whispered. The wind softened around them, brushing through the canyon like a gentle exhale. She looked toward the path ahead, where sunlight touched the stone in warm patches. I will tell you more, she said quietly. But not here. Ethan followed her gaze. The canyon felt calm, but the quiet beneath her words told him the deeper story had only begun. They left the hollow carefully, stepping back into the wide wash of afternoon light that stretched across the canyon floor. The heat had softened, turning the stone a muted gold, and the air carried a faint hum that felt almost gentle compared to the tension in Leary's voice moments earlier. Ethan walked beside her without crowding her, matching her pace as she adjusted to the shifting terrain. She moved quietly, her long silver hair catching the light like thin threads of water. Every now and then she touched the canyon wall, as if confirming that it was real, that it would not suddenly close in on her the way her past had. Ethan stole a glance at her, noticing the way her gaze stayed alert despite her calm tone. There is a small shelter up ahead, he said. A place geologists use when the weather turns. We can rest there. Leary nodded, though her brows drew together slightly, as if she was weighing trust against habit. She kept close enough that he could hear the soft rhythm of her breath, steady but light, like someone still conserving energy after being afraid for a long time. When they reached a gentle rise in the canyon, Ethan pointed to a narrow opening in the rock. The entrance was shaded and framed by smooth vertical stone that had been shaped by years of wind. Inside is cooler, he said. Leary hesitated only a heartbeat before stepping in. The shelter was small, just an alcove carved by nature, but it felt safe, lit by a sliver of sunlight that spilled through a gap overhead. Leary's eyes adjusted quickly. She moved to the far wall and lowered herself slowly to the ground, folding her legs beneath her. Ethan sat nearby, giving her space again. For a while, neither of them spoke. The quiet inside the stone alcove felt softer than the open canyon, like the world had lowered its voice. Leary's gaze wandered along the rock ceiling, following the faint patterns etched there by time. Finally she exhaled, a slow release that sounded as though she had held it in for hours. My world has rules, she said, her voice low. Rules that decide what a person can be. Rules that decide who is allowed to leave and who is not. She brushed her fingers against the stone floor, tracing a line in the dust. I was not supposed to leave. Ethan listened, shifting slightly so she knew she had his full attention. Leary continued, her tone steady but quiet. I was chosen for a role I did not want. A role that would keep me in one place, under the watch of others. Her eyes lifted to meet his. I did not agree. I ran. Ethan nodded gently, not interrupting. She looked grateful for that. The ones who search for me, they do not wish to harm me. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But they wish to take me back. And I cannot go back. Her hands tightened briefly, then relaxed. When the ground broke beneath me, I thought it was the end of my running. She looked at him again, and something soft passed through her gaze. Then you were there. Ethan felt a quiet warmth rise in his chest, a simple understanding that did not need to be spoken. The shelter remained silent for a long moment, filled only by the faint whisper of wind filtering through the overhead crack. Leary looked toward the canyon beyond the entrance, her golden eyes reflecting a glow that was both hopeful and uncertain. If you stay with me a little longer, she said softly, I think I can finally tell you the whole truth. Her voice did not tremble this time. It simply asked, and trusted he would hear it. The light inside the alcove softened as the sun shifted behind the canyon walls, turning the narrow crack overhead into a warm stripe of gold that slowly slid across the stone. Leary watched that stripe as if measuring time by its movement. Ethan stayed beside her, quiet, giving her the room she needed. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a gentleness that felt deliberate, as if she had chosen each word long before letting it leave her lips. My people believe every life has a path, she said, a place where one is meant to stand. A duty. She looked down at her hands, turning them slowly as though reading something written on her palms. My path was chosen by my elders before I could speak. Ethan nodded lightly, encouraging her without interrupting. Leary continued, I belong to a group responsible for guiding others. Not leaders, exactly. More like those who shaped the expectations of our society. She paused, searching for a human word. A symbol, perhaps. Her fingers brushed the dust at her side in a slow arc, but symbols are not allowed to leave. They are not allowed to choose their own direction. Ethan listened, feeling the weight behind her steady tone. You wanted a different life? He said softly. Leary's golden eyes lifted to him. I wanted a life that belonged to me. One where I could decide who I was, not simply reflect what others needed me to be. The overhead light touched her face, catching the faint shimmer beneath her skin. She looked almost translucent for a moment, like the truth she carried was something fragile. I did not understand how large your world was, she said. I only knew I needed to move, to step away from the place I stood. She traced another line on the ground. When I reached your deserts, I felt something I had never felt before. Choice. Ethan felt a quiet warmth settle in his chest. Everyone deserves that, he said. She held his gaze for a long moment, as if studying the sincerity in his eyes. Then she exhaled softly, the sound almost like relief. When I ran, they followed. Not to harm me, but to take me back to the place where I would stand still forever. Her hands folded together in her lap. I could not return to that. The canyon breeze slipped into the shelter, carrying a faint coolness that brushed against their skin. Leary closed her eyes briefly, letting the air settle around her. When the ground opened beneath me, she said quietly, I thought perhaps that was the end of my path, that I would disappear between the stone, and no one would ever know what I had tried to do. She opened her eyes again, and there was something changed in them, something steady and bright. But you reached for me. You did not know who I was. You did not know what danger followed me. And still, you reached. Ethan shifted slightly, not closer, but in quiet recognition of what she offered him through those words. She studied his face with a kind of wonder, as if she had never seen someone choose kindness without obligation. You asked if I wanted you to stay with me a little longer, she said. I do. She looked toward the canyon entrance, where the light had turned to soft amber. And if you walk with me beyond this shelter, I will tell you what waits on the horizon. The truth I have not yet shared. The wind settled. The canyon held its breath, as if listening to her choice unfold. The last of the daylight filtered through the narrow opening of the alcove, turning the dust in the air into a soft golden haze. Ethan rose first, brushing the dirt from his jeans before offering Leary a steady hand. She accepted it gently, her fingers light against his palm as she pushed herself upright. The shift of her weight was careful, almost ceremonial, as if stepping out of the shelter meant stepping into a truth she had been avoiding until now. They left the alcove together, moving back into the wide canyon, where the air felt cooler and the shadows stretched long across the ground. Leary walked slowly, her eyes adjusting to the change in light. She held her arms close to her body, not out of fear, but as if protecting something delicate inside her. Ethan matched her pace, letting her guide the distance between them. When they reached a flat stretch of ground where the canyon opened slightly, she stopped. The silence around them deepened, the kind that arrives before a confession. Leary looked toward the horizon, where the stone walls dipped just enough for a pale line of sky to show. You asked what waits for me, she said softly. Ethan nodded. She turned back to him, her expression calm, but carrying a quiet weight. In my world, when someone is chosen to be a symbol, they are given responsibilities. Voice, presence, a role in guiding the people. But the truth is, it is not a role of freedom. It is a role of certainty. Every choice is watched, every step expected. She paused, brushing a strand of silver hair behind her ear. I was meant to stand in that place forever. The canyon wind lifted lightly, brushing against her clothing. But when I saw other paths, when I saw what choice looked like for others, I knew I could not stay. She met Ethan's eyes, the gold in them catching the fading light. Leaving was not rebellion. It was survival of the self. But to my people, it meant I was unfinished, unsafe, in need of being returned. Ethan listened without interrupting, the rhythm of her voice drawing him closer without either of them moving. They do not see me as lost, she said. They see me as misaligned, as someone whose path has wandered too far from where it should be. She wrapped her arms around herself gently, not in fear, but in a quiet embrace of honesty. That is why they search. Ethan shifted, the gravel beneath his boots crunching softly. And if they find you? Leary's gaze softened. They will bring me back. Not through harm, but through expectation. Through duty. She looked at the canyon walls rising around them. I have run so far, Ethan, and yet the horizon feels no closer. He studied her, noticing the small tremor in her breath, the tiny quiver of vulnerability she tried to hide. You do not have to face it alone, he said quietly. She looked at him with a stillness that felt like gratitude woven into the very air between them. That is something I had not considered, she whispered. The last of the sunlight slipped behind the ridge, leaving them in a gentle amber glow. Leary stepped closer, just enough that their shadows touched on the ground. There is more I need to tell you, she said, her voice barely above the breeze. But to speak it, I need to know I am safe here. Ethan nodded once, a promise without words. Leary exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Then I will tell you the truth that lies beneath everything else. Her golden eyes lifted to his, quiet and full, as the canyon held the moment in a breathless stillness. The canyon dimmed into early evening, the sky above turning a soft gradient of blue and rose that settled gently across the ridge. The light seemed to quiet everything, even the small stones beneath their feet. Ethan waited, letting Leary find her breath. She stood still for a moment, her silver hair catching the last glow of daylight, her expression focused as though aligning the truth inside her with the words she was about to share. When she finally spoke, her voice held a calm weight, the kind that did not come from fear but from acceptance. Ethan, she said, the people who search for me are not simply guardians or guides. They are part of the group that shaped my life from the beginning. They set the expectations. They maintain the paths. Her hands folded together gently, and I was meant to follow one. Ethan stepped a little closer, his presence steady beside her. Leary looked toward the canyon's far edge, where the color of the sky met the darkening stone. But there is something they do not know, she continued, her tone lowering. A truth I kept hidden until the day I ran. She paused, gathering courage from the quiet around them. Ethan, I am not only a symbol. I am a successor, chosen to inherit a role that binds one person to the entire structure of my society. Her eyes lifted to his, gold reflecting the fading light. It is a position that does not allow change. It does not allow movement. She turned her palms upward, as if offering the idea for him to see. I was chosen for it before I even understood what it meant to want something for myself. Ethan's breath slowed. He could sense the significance of her words without fully understanding the system she described. So when you ran, he said softly, you were not running from danger. You were running from a lifetime already decided. Leary nodded. Yes. The canyon breeze brushed lightly against them. But there is more, she added. The reason they search for me so urgently is not because I escaped. It is because they fear what it means if someone meant to guide. The people chooses another path. Her hands lowered to her sides. If a successor steps away, it suggests the structure is not unbreakable. She looked down, as though the thought weighed heavily on her. And they are afraid of that. Ethan let the silence sit for a moment, letting her words settle in the air. What happens if they reach you again? He asked, his tone gentle, careful. Leary breathed out slowly. They will persuade. They will explain. They will use every reason they have. And they will be kind. That is why it is difficult. She closed her eyes briefly. They are not cruel. They simply believe they know what is best. The honesty in her voice made the space between them feel even more intimate, like the canyon itself leaned in to listen. Leary opened her eyes, meeting Ethan's gaze with a quiet steadiness. You asked me earlier if I felt safe. I do. She took one small step toward him, closing a sliver of the space. But safety is not the same as freedom. The light shifted one last time before the sun dipped below the ridge entirely. In the soft twilight, Leary's features glowed gently, her expression open in a way Ethan had not seen before. I need to make a choice, she whispered, and I think you will understand it when the moment comes. The canyon wrapped them in a calm stillness, as if preparing for the decision that hovered just beyond the next breath. Twilight settled fully over the canyon, turning the stone walls into soft silhouettes against a deepening sky. A faint shimmer remained on the horizon, the last trace of daylight fading behind the ridge. Ethan and Leary stood in the open stretch where the canyon widened, the air cooler now, carrying the crisp scent of night approaching. Leary looked upward, her golden eyes reflecting the first emerging stars. There was a quiet focus in her expression, something distant yet deeply present, as if she was listening to a memory only she could hear. My people will reach this place soon, she said softly. I can feel it. Ethan watched her, steady and patient. You do not have to go with them, he said. She turned slightly, her gaze gentle but complex. It is not that simple. They believe they are helping me. They believe they are restoring order. Her voice carried no bitterness, just truth delivered with a soft clarity. And if they find me, they will speak to me as if they already know my heart. Ethan moved a step closer, not crowding her, just grounding himself in her presence. But they do not, he said quietly. Not the way you have shared it with me. Leary's chest rose with a slow breath, as though absorbing the weight of his words. She tilted her head toward the darkened path ahead. There is something I need to show you, she said. Something that explains why I left more than duty behind. She began to walk, her steps light on the gravel, and Ethan followed. They moved toward a shallow rise where the canyon floor met a ridge of stones, smoothed by centuries of wind. As they reached the top, Leary lifted her hand and traced a gentle arc through the air. A faint glow appeared in response, hovering for a moment like a soft reflection of her inner energy. It illuminated the stone beneath them, revealing a set of markings etched into the ground. Ethan knelt to see them more clearly. The patterns were intricate, flowing like strands of light frozen in stone. These are from my world, Leary said. They appear when someone carries a role of significance. And they remain even after the person leaves. Ethan looked up at her. These markings, they followed you here. She nodded slowly. They represent identity, obligation, lineage. Everything that defines who I was supposed to be. She placed her fingertips over one of the glowing lines. I thought distance would make them fade, but they appeared again when I reached this ridge. Ethan could see the conflict in her posture, the tension between who she had been told to become and who she wanted to be. This is why they search for me, she continued. Not because I am lost, but because these markings claim I have a role I must fulfill. She stepped back from the glowing patterns, the light reflecting subtly off her blue-green skin. But here, she whispered, in your world, I am not a symbol. I am just myself. Ethan stood beside her, letting the quiet settle around them. So what does the glow mean now, he asked. Leary looked toward him, her voice soft. It means my past is reaching for me. She looked at the stars, brighter now in the unfolding night. But I am reaching for something else. She stepped closer, her expression calm, resolved. Ethan, there is a moment coming soon. A moment where I must choose between the path laid before me and the path I feel inside myself. The wind brushed past them, carrying a faint hum through the canyon. Leary's gaze held his, steady and luminous. And when that moment arrives, she said quietly, I need you to trust the choice I make. The canyon fell silent, as if the earth itself waited for what came next. The night deepened until the canyon became a quiet ribbon of shadow beneath a sky scattered with stars. Their pale light shimmered softly across the stone, catching the faint glow of the markings at Leary's feet before those markings slowly dimmed, as if retreating back into the ground. Leary watched the last trace of light fade, her expression calm in a way Ethan had never seen before, like someone stepping into a truth they had spent a lifetime avoiding. The air felt still, the kind of stillness that arrives right before something shifts. Leary turned toward him, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight in a soft, steady glow. The moment is here, she said. Ethan did not move. He simply waited, grounding himself in the quiet between them. Leary inhaled deeply, her breath visible in the cool night air. My people are close, she continued. I can feel the familiar pull. It is like a thread tugging at the center of my chest, a reminder of everything I was meant to be. She stepped forward, closing the final distance between them until her presence felt like a gentle warmth against the cool desert air. But when I look at you, she whispered, the pull feels different. It feels like freedom. Ethan felt something settle inside him, a quiet understanding, a certainty without explanation. Leary glanced toward the far side of the ridge. A faint shimmer glowed between the rocks, subtle but unmistakable, like a distant lantern calling softly. She lowered her gaze. That is the signal they use. They are asking me to return. Ethan waited, letting the silence sit without pressure. Leary's voice softened. You once said I did not have to face this alone. You meant it. I saw it in everything you did. She reached out and touched his hand. Lightly, her fingers warm against his skin. The gesture was simple, but it held the weight of a decision. But my choice must be made by me alone, she said. Not out of fear, not out of duty, out of truth. She took one slow step back and lifted her eyes to the sky, the stars reflecting in the gold of her irises. I choose to stay on the path I feel, she whispered, not the one laid before me. The faint shimmer across the ridge brightened for a moment, as if calling again, but Leary did not turn toward it. Instead, she bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect toward her past. Then she straightened with quiet resolve. My people will understand one day, she said softly. Even if today is not that day. She looked at Ethan again, her expression clear and filled with a gentle certainty. They will search until they see I am not lost. I am simply changed. The shimmer across the ridge slowly faded, retreating back into the darkness as if accepting her choice. Leary exhaled, her breath steady. Thank you, Ethan, she said, her voice soft but sure. You did not save a successor. You simply helped a person who was afraid. And because of that, I can finally choose who I am. The wind brushed lightly through the canyon, carrying the soft rustle of night across the stone. Leary stepped beside him, close but without urgency, as if the moment no longer belonged to fear or expectation. Ethan looked at her, seeing not the symbol she had been shaped to become, but the person she had chosen to be. Under the quiet sky, their shadows merged gently on the ground. No words were needed. The stars reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, they looked entirely her own.